All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 38 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. St. Patrick's Day is coming up on the 17th, which is Wednesday. And so we're going to talk basically everything Irish movies. It's not going to be specifically just like Ireland. We're going to talk about movies that take place in Boston, which has obviously become known as like the Ireland of America, because that's where a lot of the Boston actors and come from, and they're all Irish and all that stuff. So a lot of movies that center in Boston that are about Irish people. So we're going to talk about some of those. And let's get it started probably with, I think, the quintessential St. Paddy's Day movie. And to this point, for the last 20 years at least, Boondock Saints. The Boondock Saints. Directed by Troy Duffy, starring Sean Patrick Flannery and Norman Reedus, also Willem Dafoe. So the story with this movie, it hit all the film festivals. It was pretty successful, but no studio seemed to know what to do with it. It was an indie film owned by an indie company at the time, and it wasn't until later that it was basically just dumped on home video. And at that point, kids, that was VHS mainly. The DVD, I think, would come out like a year or two later. And it just blew up. It became almost an instant cult hit. With everybody in our generation, Wayne. It's a movie people love to quote. What's interesting is the two main actors at the time were really not that famous. Sean Patrick Flannery had been in some like rom-coms and stuff. Norman Reedus, this was before Blade 2, so he'd done maybe a couple movies here and there. He was an 8mm for like a hot second, but this was like his big starring role. They were able to land for this indie little action film, Willem frickin' Dafoe, which I think helped save this movie and kind of make it be what it is because, you know, the action's cool, the sequences are cool, but his character is just so rich in this movie and so good. Just when he's going, and there was a firefight! Just the emotion and the range that he showed in this role. It could have been such a throwaway role. A cop chasing some bad guys doesn't need to be as cool and as awesome as he made it be, but he made it just so great. I mean, obviously, we should also mention the great Billy Connolly. He plays as, spoiler alert, the grandfather. If we keep going down this road, you guys, this movie's 20 years old, so you should know it. All right, real quick, the plot. In Boston, two Irish-American twin brothers, Connor and Murphy McManus, Sean Patrick Flannery and Norman Reedus, attend Mass where the priest mentions the fate of Kitty Genovese. Later, when Connor and Murphy are celebrating St. Patrick's Day with friends, three Russian mobsters arrive and announce they want to close the pub and take over the land it is built on. A brawl ensues in which the Russians are defeated and humiliated. The next morning, when two of the Russians seek revenge on Connor and Murphy, the mobsters are killed in self-defense. So that then starts this big story about these cops chasing down these criminals who killed these mobsters. The mobsters also want them dead. So it's basically them fighting for their lives, and they're becoming like these vigilantes. And almost like a fairy tale, kind of like a folk tale. And I think that's what's really cool. Sorry, go ahead.
They're angels, to quote the great Paul Smecker, Willem Dafoe, when he's talking to Greenlee.
Yes. So they, again, like just end up becoming these folk heroes that people root for. So that's why it's great when they tell these stories, because all the action, for the most part, takes place after the fact, right? They show up to the scene, and then it's Willem Dafoe's character describing what has happened. And there's just... Go ahead.
All right, this is the first real experience I had with really absorbing the time jumping in a film, where we go back, or we see the aftermath, and then we jump back, kind of the, the memento effect a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, this is the first real thing I was like, in my mind was like, blown. Like, what is going on? Holy cow. Side note, I just have to say that Detective Greenlee, the kind of comic relief, the cops, the guy that ever gets picked on, the actor's name is Bob Marley. I mean, I've never realized that, and I enjoy that so much more.
Yes, it's a great role. It's a really fun movie. It's very violent, very bloody, but it's a lot of fun, and like I said, it's become this big cult hit. It did get a sequel that I know a lot of people weren't fond of, and that's fine. But it is one of those movies that can stand alone. So you don't necessarily need the sequel. If you don't like the sequel, then you can live with the first movie. And it just had a lot of those like Irish Catholic themes that you kind of look for in your Irish crime films.
Dragging a potato through the streets, trying to get him out of hiding. You'd have better luck with beer.
Yes.
Subtle nuances.
Yes. Let's see. There's also, I wanted to talk about too, David Delarocco, who plays David the Funny Man Delarocco, basically playing himself, is a henchman for the mobs, but he's like a good friend with the brothers, so he ends up basically helping them out. And he's a great character that I think a lot of people liked. I'll have a Coke. There's just so many things from this movie that just have made it into everyday vernacular that I think people don't always realize. And
what, you laugh the last three to death? Huh, funny man?
It does unfortunately contain Ron Jeremy, so hopefully we can just all forget that at this point in time. But it, yeah, exactly. The production too, like it was known to be kind of a tough production. Troy Duffy they made a documentary about the man and how he's not a very good person to work for.
He is not a good dude at all, apparently.
Yeah.
I said that when I was going to film school, I went to Chicago, Columbia College, Chicago, and obviously downtown Chicago. And they asked, well, what's something that really inspired you to become like a filmmaker, get into film and video? It's like, honestly, I love Boondock Saints, and I know that's the stereotypical answer these get. And my instructor at the time just gave me the biggest eye roll and disgusted sigh and talked about how much of a jerk Troy Duffy was and yada yada yada. And,
yeah,
inspired a lot of people to get into film and video, but
he did, and I mean, and Boondock. That's a good point too, because Boondock Saints was like the Pulp Fiction of its time, even though Pulp Fiction was only about 6 years before then. But I guarantee you, anyone that went into film school in 1995 was saying, hey, I want to be a filmmaker because I saw Pulp Fiction. And Boondock Saints, I think, had that same effect on people. I think to a certain extent, some people are probably annoyed by its fandom, but it just, it hit with a lot of people in the right way. And it was, like I said, it was this little movie. I worked at Blockbuster at the time it came out. I had no idea what it was. When it hit the shelf, it was straight to VHS. Didn't really have any clue.
It's funny that you bring up Blockbuster. Well, not funny because we talk about Blockbuster all the time, but I walked past Boondock Saints. It was sitting on the end aisle, in the action section. Yep. I probably, 4 weeks straight, getting my weekend stuff ready. And I finally was like, all right, I keep looking at it. I keep wanting to grab it, but I don't. We grabbed it there for that weekend. We had to have watched it at least 5 times over a 2-day stretch. We were just that into it. So.
Well, and I think Blockbuster was lucky enough when it came out. I believe it was one of the studios, the indie studios. I know 20th Century Fox was behind it a little bit too, but one of the major studio that produced it was an indie studio that we always carried a good amount of their copies. So we got probably 20 to 25 copies on VHS of this movie that no one really heard of before. And they were constantly checked out. So that became a thing real quickly when it came out that like, oh my God, this movie is gone like all the time. And it just became, as people started renting it and watching it, they started talking about it. Word of mouth really made this movie what it is. Is it a masterpiece? I don't know if that's the case, but it's a really entertaining and fun movie. It's very cool, very stylistic, really cool performances from your lead characters. Like I said, Willem Dafoe is amazing in this movie. I've always been a fan of Billy Connolly, so to see him in something like this was a lot of fun.
You don't even really notice how bad the Irish accents are either.
They aren't great. I will be honest. That Sean Patrick Flannery and Norman Reedus do not do great Irish accents, but they did okay. Enough to be passable.
Right.
All right, so moving on, we're gonna stay in the crime area for the next 2 films. The Departed, which is a Boston Irish crime film that takes place in I think it's the mid 2000s. They use cell phones, so when it came out in the mid 2000s, starring obviously Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Alec Baldwin, Martin Sheen, Anthony Anderson, James Badge Dale, directed by the great Martin Scorsese. It would be his first time that he ever won an Oscar, and that his movie won an Oscar for Best Picture. It is, in my opinion, one of his best films. I've watched this numerous times. I know it's hard when it comes to someone like Scorsese. It's really hard to pick. It's a movie. It's loosely based on it's a remake of Infernal Affairs, which is a Korean film, which is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. It's also loosely based on what the hell the guy's name is that Johnny Depp played.
Right?
James Whitey Bulger.
Yeah.
So it's loosely
Black something, right?
Black Mass, yeah.
That's what it is.
It's loosely
Black something.
Black something. Jack Nicholson's character is loosely based on Whitey Bulger. He talk about bad Irish accents. You know, he can't really do one.
And I gotta ask you to do it. Come on.
So I sit here and I think to myself, what can I use you for?
Yes, there it is. And because Jack Nicholson, it's another time where you're good with it, and then you start thinking about how he does after the film. For me, it didn't take me out of it, but I'm like...
It's almost as if his character was trying to do an Irish accent. Like, it wasn't like, it didn't seem authentic, which is why he didn't do it much throughout the movie. He was great in this movie, and it was a shame that he didn't get nominated because they wanted to kind of like spread the love. So they get Wahlberg got a Best Supporting Actor nomination, which he deserved it. He was really good in this. He usually is good when he's got to throw that Boston accent on. It's usually where he's kind of at his home. It's just an incredible film, in my opinion. I love cop movies and I love mob movies. So the fact that you basically take the two of them and you combine them into one is fantastic.
I'm the guy that did my job. You must have been the other guy.
Yeah.
I think it's the only time where he doesn't curse in the movie. So
yeah, pretty much. Or she fell funny. That's one of my favorite scenes. When they're on the beach and they do this assassination. Yeah, she fell funny. Mr. French looks at him. You're really messed up. Or something along those lines. It's just Francis, yeah. Francis is fantastic. There's so many great scenes. The scene in the shop where Leo is at the diner or whatever. It was like a convenience store. The convenience store, and the two Italian guys walk in, and he beats the crap out of them.
Those two guys get tuned up?
Yeah. There's so many great one-liners out of this one, too. I love the Patriot Act from Alec Baldwin. Baldwin's got some great lines in it. Wahlberg's got some great lines. Leo's performance is fantastic. I mean, there's the shocking ending, which I think, if you had seen the original movie, you would see coming. They did change the ending. They did tweak it at the end a little bit to kind of for everyone to get their just desserts in this movie.
The symbolism at the end with the rat running across.
Yeah, a lot of people. That's one thing that comes into question because people think that it's very obvious, so that he didn't need to do that. But I always, and it's fine to not like it, but like, and people love the movie. It doesn't ruin the movie for them. They still love the movie. It's just it's obvious symbolism because obviously he's a rat, so it's a. But I don't know. I never even thought about it until people started having a problem with that part.
Who's the rat though? Because they're both considered the rat, depending on what side you're.
That's true. That's true. There is a double symbolism to it. I think where a lot of people didn't maybe see that. So that's an interesting way to look at it. And that's exactly how the original movie comes off to be too. If anyone hasn't seen it, you need to check it out.
What is it called?
Infernal Affairs. They made like 5 of them, but the first one is the only good one. But that's just how they do movies over there. Once they're successful, they have to just make a ton of them. Kind of like here, but they do them a lot more quickly there. Yeah, so, I mean, The Departed, again, it's not, specifically Irish, but it's about an Irish mob. It's about a bunch of Irish guys from Boston who joined the police force and stuff. So it really it has that feel, that Irish feel to me. And obviously they use Dropkick Murphys song, which helps shipping off to Boston. It's just such a great film. The violence, the symbolism, the characters, just throughout this entire film, the cinematography, it looks fantastic. Lots of just like crazy wide shots that they do too. It's just such a cool flipping movie, man. And this is one of those movies, like, if you haven't seen The Departed, like, you're sleeping on it. You need to watch it. You need to go check it out now. It's often on like either Netflix or Amazon Prime. It's just one of those movies that kind of makes its way. I'm sure it'll be on HBO at some point because I believe it's a Warner Brothers flick. But yeah, you definitely need to check out The Departed, as I like to call it.
Yeah, if you like organized crime films, I mean, I'm not going to put it up there with The Godfather or Goodfellas, but it's close. I mean, it's in the tier underneath. You know, it's fantastic. Come on now, let's go.
I would say, as far as like modern crime, like mobster films, it's definitely one of the better ones, because a lot of the other ones that you just mentioned, even though they're old to us now, like Godfather took place in like the 30s and 40s and 50s, and Goodfellas took place in the 70s and came out in the 90s. So I mean, there's a lot of different time periods, and this were Departed, like I said, when it came out is when it took place, because they used cell phones a lot as part of their as a plot device, which I thought was really cool.
When we were talking about cell phones, Matt Damon's got the flip phone with the multi-touch keypad, and he's texting in his pocket without looking. I'm like, I don't think I could pull that off ever in my life.
Especially then, when you had to hit it like 3 times to get the right key. You know, because on those cell phones, it's like, you know, the number 1 was ABC. So you had to know exactly how many hits that each one needed to get to spell the right word.
Well, capital and lowercase. So
yeah, it's impressive. Let's just say that. I know Matt Damon's work ethic, so I'm assuming he probably did that, because I could see him being one of those people like, no, I got to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it.
I understand now why Sarah Silverman is Matt Damon.
It makes a lot of sense. All right. So again, Departed, if you haven't seen it, I mean, this movie is fantastic. All right. The last crime film I want to talk about is a movie that I always like to go back to, especially because it was kind of the return of Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell, people know, did a lot of movies in early 2000s that were, he wasn't great in them. You know, Daredevil, The Recruit, Phone Booth. But he became famous. You know, people knew him. They liked him. He looked cool. He looked nice. He's attractive. He went away for a little bit after, I think it was after Alexander. So for like 2 years, and he like studied acting again. And then he came back and he did this movie called In Bruges, directed by Martin McDonagh, who people will know from directed 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. It stars Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Ralph Fiennes, and it's called In Bruges. And it's a movie about an Irish mobster who is basically, the order to kill him has been put through. The boss wants to take care of it himself. Brendan Gleeson basically takes him to Bruges, which is in Belgium, to hide him. So they are 2 Irish hitmen who are hiding from their enraged boss. And it's funny. It's dark, comedy. It's bloody. It's brilliant, in my opinion. One of the best movies, I think, of that year when it came out in 2008, and there was a lot that came out in 2008. I know Farrell, let's see, here we go. McDonagh won an award for Best Original Screenplay at the BAFTAs, which is the British Academy Awards, and he was actually nominated for an Oscar that year for that movie. It got a bunch of Golden Globe nominations, I believe, for Colin Farrell. Farrell was nominated for Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. And Gleeson was also nominated in the same category. I actually didn't realize that. They're both fantastic in it. It's darkly funny. It's just a well-written, well-performed film. Ralph Fiennes plays a great mob boss. There's some things that just like, I really can't talk about everything, because there's some things that will probably be offensive to people today if you haven't seen this movie. But really, I really want people to check this one out if you haven't seen it. It's just such a great film, and it really it brought back, like, when I saw Colin Farrell in it, and he really hasn't. I mean, granted, he's probably been in bad movies since, but he hasn't really given a bad performance since this movie.
Right.
And go ahead.
I think you really hold his own with the likes of Brendan Gleeson and Ralph Fiennes. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I always last name. Stupid Voldemort.
Yes.
But yeah, he was actually surprising how well he just could hold his own against actors of this caliber. The last time I remember seeing Colin Farrell before his hiatus, I guess you could call it, was in SWAT.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a great action movie. It didn't really flex his range of acting, but it was still really enjoyable. So I have not seen this film that we're talking about right now, but I did want to just touch on Colin Farrell a little bit. If we can, are you finished talking about this one?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Colin Farrell in True Detective. Holy cow! I think we both know what scene pops in your head. Well, I know what scene pops in my head when I say that, and that's with the kid in the front porch and the father. Holy crap, dude! But just from where he was before the hiatus to after, like you said, he hasn't given a bad performance.
Yes.
Well, and whatever he did, I applaud him 100% because, like you mentioned, not to say he was a bad actor before in the beginning, but he really did get by in his looks and not taking really challenging roles. And since then, yeah,
he's kind of he takes it, I think, a bit more seriously. It's good that you brought up True Detective because that was a very polarizing season of that show. A lot of people, it was kind of split down the middle whether people liked it or not. However, I think most people would agree that his performance was really good, and he was one of the better actors in that season. I know people were kind of iffy on Vince Vaughn because he played like a mob boss, which is kind of a very off topic or off kilter for him a little bit. But Farrell was fantastic in that, and he really, like I said, he truly has been great in even in all the movies I've seen, even in Ava with Jessica Chastain, which I didn't really, if you watch Following Up Some Shit, I didn't really care for that movie. I thought Colin Farrell still did a good job in that film. It was not a great movie. This, like I said, this isn't to say that he's made nothing but spectacular movies ever since. He's just somehow learned how to act and does it very well now. And anytime I see his name attached to something, I'm always like, oh, well, I'm now more interested now than I was before, when I heard about this movie. And again, he'll be in the Batman. I know you're kind of tired of the Batman movies, but he will be in the Batman movie as Penguin, transformed basically.
No, I mean, I'm not tired of it. It's just I want DC to up its game, and we're going to be reviewing something soon that I don't know. I don't even know if we should even talk about it.
We'll mention it at the end because it'll be next week, so we'll mention it at the end. Okay. But yeah, I'm sure everyone can probably figure out what it is, but we'll leave the stinger at the end of what we're going to be revealing next week and our thoughts, our pre-thoughts on it.
And I'm just saying, please don't be awful. That's it.
Especially because it's going to be flipping long as hell. All right. So there are obviously more horror films that I could talk about, but I think when everybody thinks St. Patrick's Day and horror films, they're going to think of the Leprechaun series. Started in 1993, directed by Mark Jones, starring Warwick Davis and Jennifer Aniston in her film debut, everybody. Leprechaun, a movie I believe she likes to forget that she was in. But you know who doesn't forget? Horror fans, because we love Leprechaun because he's hilarious and murderous and bloody, and he wants his gold, and he'll kill you for it, and he'll rip it out of your stomach. And that's why we love him. Plot. 1983, Dan O'Grady returns to his home in North Dakota from a trip to his native Ireland, where he stole the pot of gold from a leprechaun. After burying the gold, O'Grady discovers that the evil leprechaun has followed him home and murdered his wife. O'Grady uses a 4-leaf clover to suppress the leprechaun's powers and trap him inside a crate before he can burn him. He suffers a stroke. 10 years later, J.D. Redding and his teenage daughter, Tori, rent the O'Grady farmhouse for the summer. Contract workers Nathan Murphy, his 10-year-old brother Alex, and their dim-witted friend Ozzie Jones help repaint the farmhouse while looking around the basement. Ozzie hears the leprechaun's cry for help and mistakes him for a little child. He brushes the old 4-leaf clover off the crate, freeing the leprechaun. After failing to convince the others that he met a leprechaun, Ozzie spots a rainbow and chases it, believing that he will find a pot of gold at the end. Alex accompanies him for the fear that Ozzy might hurt himself. A bag of 100 gold coins magically appears before Ozzy. After Ozzy tests the gold and accidentally swallows a coin, they stash it in an old well and plot to keep it for themselves, hoping to fix Ozzy's brain. So therefore, they've stolen the gold. The leprechaun is not happy they've stolen the gold, and he wreaks vengeance on them. Hilarity ensues a lot, but it's not as funny as the sequels. It is a little more serious than the first one. The sequels are goofy. They definitely, there's Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun Back to the Hood, Leprechaun in Space. They're kind of ridiculous. Now, the other sequel I want to talk about is Leprechaun Returns. So they did everything, what they're doing with Halloween and Candyman and some of the other horror films coming up. They retconned all the sequels, and they made another sequel called Leprechaun Returns, which is supposed to be a direct take after Leprechaun. Ozzy, the actor that plays Ozzy, comes back. Obviously, Jennifer Aniston does not return. I believe it's supposed to be her daughter, if I remember correctly. It's directed by Steven Kostanski, who we've talked about numerous times already in the last couple of weeks. He did The Void. He did Psycho Gorman. As I talked about, he's doing the Day of the Dead sequel series. We watched Manborg. He directed this one. It was straight to sci-fi, but it's pretty solid. It's a solid sequel. Leprechaun basically returns to steal his gold because he wants his gold back. And it's a creative sequel, I think, to what I thought the first one was good. In the horror community, it's still split on whether Leprechaun's a good movie or not. I love this movie. I grew up on this film. It came out in 93. So I watched it numerous times growing up. And I loved it. I loved Warwick Davis's take on it. Obviously, the new one, Leprechaun Returns, there is a new Leprechaun because Warwick Davis at this point, I think, is getting a little old to be running around. Yes, he's been in Harry Potter. He's been in some of the Star Wars stuff. He's coming back as Willow for Disney Plus, which I think will definitely be very interesting. But as far as Leprechaun goes, I think Leprechaun kind of overtook all his other characters, maybe till Harry Potter came out just because of how big Harry Potter is, but because there were so many Leprechauns. Like, he was Willow, and people from our generation, we love Willow, so that was a big thing. But then the fact that then he became Leprechaun, and then they made 7 of those movies, and you're just like, well, okay, he's Leprechaun now. That's who he will forever be. But yeah, so I mean, to me, again, yes, these movies are cheesy, but they're fun, they're gory, they're bloody, and he's a great character, I think.
I'm very curious about Leprechaun in Space.
If I remember correctly, he becomes very large. It's so strange. It started the whole in space thing, because then you get Jason X, which was Jason in space.
Obviously the best one of the series. Of
course. We're still waiting for Machete in space. I'm holding out hopes that they actually make that film. There are many other Irish horror films to look out, but that's the one I wanted to talk about. Obviously, it's very St. Paddy's Day themed because it's about a killer leprechaun. All right, so moving on, we're just going to briefly touch on a couple of these. These are immigrant stories. So there's this movie called Brooklyn from a couple years ago, starring the lovely Saoirse Ronan, who is also Irish by way of Brooklyn, though. People don't know this. She was actually born in New York and then raised in Ireland. And so she has that thick Irish accent, but she wasn't actually born in Ireland. So this movie is about a young woman who immigrates over to America and falls in love. But then she has to wrestle with her family, I think it's her mother gets sick, or her sister or something like that, so then she has to go back. And then the question comes in, is she going to return? Because then she feels like, does she feel she needs to stay and help the family and stuff? It's a really good movie. Saoirse gives a really fantastic performance. She was nominated for it. It takes place in 1951. Alice Lacey is a young woman from Enniscorthy, County Wexford, a small town in southeast Ireland where she lives with her mother and sister, Rose. She is unable to find full-time employment and works weekends in at a shop run by the spiteful Miss Kelly, nicknamed Nettles Kelly. Ellis is uninterested in the local young men. Her sister writes to an Irish priest in Brooklyn who arranges for her to travel to New York City. Ellis suffers seasickness on the voyage and is locked out of the shared toilet by her cabin neighbors. The woman in the bunk below her, an experienced traveler, gives her advice and support. In New York, Ellis lives in Brooklyn in a boarding house with other young Irish women. She has difficulty adjusting to her new life at first, but then she, meets a young man who she falls in love with. But then, like I said, I believe it's her sister that is sick and that she has to return home. But then it comes the question whether she's gonna come back and reunite with this gentleman or if she's gonna stay in Ireland. It's a beautiful movie to look at. It's very romantic. So it's a romance film. It's sad. It's emotional. It's uplifting. It's all those things. Like I said, Saoirse gives a fantastic performance. She's really becoming one of my favorite actresses. Domhnall Gleeson is actually in the movie as well. Brendan Gleeson's son. Jim Broadbent, Emery Cohen, Julie Walters, Jessica Pear. So it's got a pretty solid cast too. Just such a interesting movie and just a little different than the ones obviously that we talked about. And directed by John Crowley. I should have mentioned that ahead of time. Written by Nick Hornby, who is an author who occasionally dabbles in screenwriting, which in this case he did. So yeah, it's a really, I don't know if you've seen this one, Wayne, but it's a really, really good movie.
I have not seen this one, but I am curious for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. Another one I wanted to talk about too is one that I really liked a lot when it came out, and it was 2002, In America, directed by Jim Sheridan, starring Samantha Morton, Patty Considine, Sarah Bulger, who honestly, I'll be honest, I did not know that she was in that. Jaman Hansu. And it's a movie about these immigrants in 1985, Johnny and Sarah Sullivan, and their daughters, Christy and Ariel, entered the United States on a tourist visa from Ireland via Canada, where Johnny was working as an actor. The family settles in New York City in a rundown Hell's Kitchen tenement occupied by drug addicts, transvestites, and a reclusive Nigerian photographer named Mateo Kume, that is Jaman Hansu. Hanging over the family is the death of their 5-year-old son, Frankie, who died from a brain tumor discovered after a fall down the stairs. The devout Roman Catholic Johnny questions God and has lost any ability to feel true emotions, which has affected his relationship with his family. Christy believes she had been granted 3 wishes by her dead brother, which she only uses at times of near dire consequence for the family as they try to survive in New York. So pretty crazy. That's the opening synopsis there. Pretty crazy story. It's an immigrant story. It reminds me a lot of this year's Minari, which is a big front runner for the Oscars. Another immigrant story about immigrants that were somewhere else in America, and then, or at least in North America in this story, and then moved to another part. It's such a great movie. The performances by Samantha Morton and Jaman Hansu are fantastic. Jaman Hansu, I believe he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this movie. It's just so good. I haven't seen it in a while, so my recollection is a little hazy on it, but I know they deal with, I believe the mom gets sick at one point, so then they have to deal with that as well. And it's just such it's honestly, it's pretty depressing. So if you're not in the mood to being sad, don't watch it, but it is definitely well worth your time. I think if it might be one that people have missed because it was kind of like an indie film back in 2002. It was one of those kind of rare gems that a lot of people talked about. But not everybody always watched those rare gems that people talk about. So if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend checking it out. Wayne, do you have any thoughts on this one?
It's another one that I need to revisit for the first time, I should say. Just a little side note, as we talked about Sarah Bulger being in this film, Mayan Season 3 coming out soon. The trailer for the episode looks fantastic. So, I don't know. Did you ever heard not to get off track, but man, it's good stuff. I am very excited.
I haven't watched Season 2 yet. I'll probably do that this week because I know Season 3 is the 21st, I want to say, right? Something like that. Or actually, it might be this Tuesday or something. It's soon. It's starting soon. I also would like to recommend A Good Woman is Hard to Find, starring Sarah Bulger, which is on Shudder, where she goes nuts, which is protecting her children, which is awesome to see, and it's a really good movie. but yeah, so Wayne, you wanted to talk The Quiet Man, a movie that I only saw part of. So let's get into that one. You'll take it up. You'll take it from here.
Absolutely. Since we are talking about the Emerald Isle, don't you know? We're going to talk about The Quiet Man, 1952. All right, that's my bad Irish accent. That's enough of that. All right, the film is starring the legendary John Wayne, Maureen O'Hara, Barry Fitzgerald, Ward Bond, Victor McLaughlin, Mildred Noswick, and there's quite a few other people that I don't recognize, but I'm sure that they may or may not have had fantastic careers in their time. Here is a little rundown synopsis. Sean Thornton has returned from America to reclaim his homestead and escape his past. He is an American boxer. Sean's eye is caught by Mary Kate Danaher, a beautiful but poor maiden, and the younger sister of the ill-tempered Red Will Danaher. The riotous relationship that forms between Sean and Mary Kate is punctuated by Will's pugnacious attempts to keep them apart. From the main plot, with Sean's past being a dark undercurrent. My father-in-law and my dad and my grandfather were huge John Wayne fans. And I really wasn't that big into Westerns. I thought they were kind of, they all seemed alike, good guy, bad. Good guy wears the white hat, bad guy wears the black hat type thing. And, the spaghetti Westerns and all that stuff, I never really showed interest in it because that's what I knew John Wayne from. Then The Quiet Man they put on, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting, singing and, lots of craziness. There's this huge fight across, the land, basically. It starts at the homestead. They end up in the middle of town. This is just a nostalgia pick for me because, my grandfather's been gone almost 20 years, and my in-laws were in town a couple weeks ago, and just getting to spend time with them and connecting with my father-in-law and whatnot. Obviously, my dad and I are big movie fans, and in truth, we haven't watched this one in 20, 25 years or more. It's just something that just brings a smile to my face when I think about it. Maureen O'Hara is the drop-dead, gorgeous example of a 1950s what an Irish woman could be. She was perfectly cast for this, obviously, with the last name O'Hara. Elaine, it works. John Wayne is John Wayne. You know what you're going to get with him and what type of role you're. I don't want to belittle the man at all, but I don't know about his range. Being not John Wayne. So, it's like if you try to cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as Shakespeare in a Shakespearean play or something, you're probably going to get an Arnold Schwarzenegger performance. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about this film other than what I've already stated. It's fun.
Yeah, good. I'll have to actually sit down and watch the whole thing because, like I said, I think I watched part of it in film class and then I didn't go back and watch the rest of it. Not that
so I know you're not a big fan. So.
What? Sorry.
It's got some musical undertones to it, so.
Oh, jeez.
I know you're not a huge fan of those. So.
And in all honesty, I'm not a big John Wayne person, and I love Westerns. I'm the opposite of you. I love Westerns, but I love more like the Clint Eastwood, a lot of the modern Westerns.
Yeah. I'm right there with you with the spaghetti Westerns, the ones that are just canned and recycled. It's like, okay, come
on. All right, so right before we get to our big crescendo of the Irish movies, as I'm going to call it right now, I do want to mention, and this is something I just discovered right now. I was going to talk about these movies called The Guard and Calvary, both starring Brendan Gleeson. I really don't need to talk much about them. I just want to promote them because they're really great Irish films. The Guard stars Brendan Gleeson and Don Cheadle and Mark Strong and Liam Cunningham. It's directed by John Michael McDonough, who is the older brother of Martin McDonough, who did In Bruges and 3 Billboards, and I did not know that. So they're both filmmakers. He also did one. So The Guard is a buddy cop movie starring him and Don Cheadle. As Don Cheadle is an American FBI man who's come to work with a case with the local Irish cops, and Brendan Gleeson is a very controversial choice for him to be partner with. He says a lot of very racial things. It's kind of like if someone teamed up with Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino, essentially. It works very well, though. It's very funny. It's a really good movie. Calvary is another one. It's a lot darker. It's about a priest starring Brendan Gleeson who had done something in his past, and it's kind of like karma. It also stars Kelly Riley from Yellowstone. She plays his daughter. It was a great performance from her in that one. And it's just a really kind of intimate little film where The Guard is very more openly dark and funny. Calvary is not as dark, but it is a very fun, not fun, it's a very well-made and solid film. And I think these are two Irish films. They showcase Ireland, which is great, I think. I had it listed as like homegrown, kind of like you were talking about Quiet Man. Like it shows the landscape of Ireland, which I think is not always very much seen. Like the movies we talked about, most of those take place in America. So it is interesting to see movies where it's actually part of the background of the film is Ireland. So definitely check those out if you haven't seen them. But the last movie we're going to talk about before we get to our next segment is, and Wayne and I were talking before the podcast started, probably one of the best movies of our generation, probably one of the best movies I think I've seen in my lifetime, and that is Good Will Hunting. And this movie, so the Irish themes, there are two Irish guys from Boston are the main characters in Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. That's where that really comes into. And it's really just another excuse for us to talk about Good Will Hunting, which we've talked about before. Story of Will, who is a genius, but he's a janitor. He kind of is punishing himself for his past, which is not his fault, which is a huge moment in the movie. And as I watched it this last week, still made me emotional and cry. So it's such a solid movie from beginning to end. It's basically perfect. And the performances by Rob Williams, Matt Damon are fantastic. What I did want to shine some light on this week, Wayne, is at this time in his career, a lot of people didn't think Ben Affleck was a good actor. They just thought he was a pretty face. And for the most part, that's true, even through most of Good Will Hunting. But that one scene, and I know you know what I'm going to be talking about, in Good Will Hunting, when they're sitting by the car, and he talks about, one day, one morning when I come to pick you up, I have this dream that I knock on the door, and you're not there. No note, no nothing. You just left town. You didn't tell me about it. That's the happiest I am, is that moment before I knock on your door. That scene is freaking amazing. I love that scene. And he's so good in that scene that you kind of have to forgive some of the other stuff throughout the movie where he's maybe not as good in some other scenes. It's just such a fantastic movie. Cole Hauser from Yellowstone is also in it. Casey Affleck is in it. I don't want to forget. God, I'm really bad with names as I get older.
Driver.
Minnie Driver,
Stellan
yes.
Skarsgård.
Stellan Skarsgård, Minnie Driver. Minnie Driver is fantastic. Probably her best performance to this day, in my opinion. Stellan Skarsgård obviously has become a reliable character actor that we see in many movies, Marvel movies, and this was his first English language movie, and he was fantastic in it. And I think it kind of started his career here. He'd already had his career overseas, but it had really kind of brought him to America's attention. And he basically has been cast in almost every movie ever since. He's one of those actors that you're kind of like, oh, there's Stellan Skarsgård. Of course there's Stellan Skarsgård. He's in everything. Obviously,
he was a superhero franchise. I don't know how well that
that one with the guy who's got the red suit and the guy with the shield and the other guy with the arrows. He's in that one.
Around with a hammer. Ooh, what are you going to do? Build me a shed? I always forget that Cole Hauser was in both the two of my favorite movies of all time. This, Good Will Hunting, and Dazed and Confused. I always forget that. And I never see either one. I'm like, yes, okay, that's right.
Also, with Ben Affleck in Dazed and Confused. So, I mean, they're
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, O'Banion.
He's such a character in that movie. Small role, but big impact. You know what I mean? Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's one. Yeah, Cole Hauser is another one of those actors that I think we take for granted. They tried to make him a star, which he's not a star, but he is somebody that is a great supporting character and is becoming a pretty good character actor. If you haven't seen Yellowstone, I really recommend it. He's fantastic in that. My wife's favorite. She thinks he looks hot in that one. So, but Good Will Hunting, though, back to, like I said, there's just so many scenes in this movie. The writing is fantastic. We partly have Ron Howard to thank for that, as Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, when they were writing it, they kind of wanted it to be like an action thriller with this stuff in it. And Ron Howard was like, choose one or the other. Don't do both. So they obviously chose the better option, and they went more drama, where the whole NSA stuff kind of comes into play later, because the whole idea was he was supposed to break some NSA code, and then that was supposed to like open up some sort of terrorist thing or something. But they went the other direction. They made it a more of a drama, more intimate movie, which just, again, it introduced the world. Like, Matt Damon had been in movies, and it kind of showed people that he could be a star. He unlike Affleck, he had actually he'd been the lead in some of the movies they had been in, which had been different, because Ben Affleck was usually like a lesser known character, like in School Ties. He was just one of the bullies, where Matt Damon was the main protagonist in that movie. Or antagonist. Which one's the bad one?
Antagonist.
He was the main. Matt Damon was the main antagonist in School Ties. So that, shows, I think, from the beginning, that he kind of had more range and better acting ability, I would say, than Affleck. Even though, as I would say, similar to Colin Farrell, Affleck has kind of brought it back around with his directing and his starring in his own movies and whatnot. He's gotten a lot better. But this movie, again, it's just a fantastic movie. It's seriously one of my favorite movies probably of all time.
When Robin Williams won the Oscar, I don't know if I had ever been more excited or just more thrilled for anyone to win, because, this man he made me laugh all my life, and how emotional I got when we talked about him in our Gone But Not Forgotten segments. But for this, with the serious, heartfelt, caring role, just when he tells him, Will, that it's not his fault. Oh my gosh, I am getting a little teary-eyed even just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And talking about how he gave up the 1975 Boston Red Sox ticket.
Yep.
Because he had to think about a girl. Just the feels, man. Just, God.
If you could have been at that game. I didn't know Pudge was going to hit a home run. I got to see about a girl.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch stole my line. So many good things in that movie. And, I guarantee you that was probably added. I don't know for a fact, but I have a feeling that Robin Williams probably added that line in the movie. Just because it feels like one of those lines where it wasn't probably written, but it was just him reacting to it.
God, the way he could just ad-lib something and it just works.
He was so good, man.
Now I'm getting sad realizing how long it's been since we've had him in our lives.
I know. Like you said, it's been almost 10 years. We were talking before the show started. And it's just been quite some time. But it's nice to go back and watch these movies and realize that we've had a long career of his, at least to go back and look at a lot of his old classics, and this being one of them. And like I said, it's just, if you haven't seen Good Will Hunting, where have you been living? You need to see this movie. It's that good. And this isn't me amping it up. It's that good.
Watch it, and then you can tell me how you like those apples.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Mini Driver's bar joke.
Oh, hilarious. Puts all the guys to shame.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next segment, and that is our review
of the week.
All right, so this week there was not, so I want to temper this, not to say that the movie was bad or not, but there weren't a lot of new movies this week, so this is the one I chose. It is called Yes Day, and it is directed by Miguel Arteta. It stars Jennifer Gardner, Edgar Ramirez, Jenna Ortega, Julian Lerner, and Megan Stott. Also, Nat Faxon plays a very comical role throughout this film. It is a film that is about two parents who are kind of like say no to everything, and they're kind of tired of it. The dad says no to everything at work. The mom says no to everybody at home, and they decide they meet this man Nat Faxon, who's he's a teacher slash coach at the school who doesn't know anything about sports, and he tells them to do a yes day. And so what a yes day is where you have one day, and it can be one day a month, one day a year, one day every 3 months, however you want to do it. One day where your kids, whatever they say, you have to say yes to it, no matter what it is. Set guidelines, obviously, no murder, no mayhem, no explosions. So within reason. As these movies go, it's fun to start when they start the yes day. And then, of course, things get real at a certain point. Things are said, people get upset. There are lots of gags in this one, as these type of family comedies have. I would say Jennifer Gardner and Edgar Ramirez, it's nice to see them as a couple in this movie. Again, that we've talked about this many times. It's about representation. So whether you like the movie or not, it's nice to see a white woman with a Hispanic man. That's basically my relationship in reverse. So it is nice to kind of feel somewhat represented on screen. Then you have three Hispanic, mixed race Hispanic kids, which is also nice to see. So again, whether you like the movie or not, that I think is something that needed to be pointed out. And I'm sure if you listen to us and you watch the movie, you know I would point it out, as I've been doing since we started this thing. So as that's being said, I enjoyed this film for what it was. It was a family film. It was funny. It's not meant to be something like high art or anything. It's just meant to be goofy, fun.
It's something for you to enjoy with your kids.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would recommend anybody watching this with their kids. Again, we talked about there aren't a lot of kid movies out right now. This is one of them that you can watch. There are some like fart jokes and stuff, only like once though, which I'm not a big fan of those. So if you're not a big fan of those, I understand, because I'm not either. A lot of people like those though. But I think the kids are pretty good for the most part. The little girl is the best, I think. She's adorable. Her and the father, when he's dropping her off at school, and Dad, you could put your music on, and they start singing the Gummy Bear song, but then they break into like Alice in Chains. Like it was really a cute little scene.
I absolutely love Fortune Feimster.
Yes.
And the Jean the paramedic. She steals all of her scenes.
Yes, and her love interest Karen with the
And her name is Karen just makes it more funny.
Yes.
Okay, Karen.
So take all your life savings and put it into an ambulance company, and something you've never driven before. She gets upset about it. I don't know why.
Eyes forward. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, she's really funny. I like her a lot. She's on the David Spade Netflix half-hour show he's got right now, where it's basically like his show that he had on Comedy Central, but they talk to all the Netflix casts. So she's funny on that, but she's funny in this too. Like I said, the movie Nat Faxon I thought was really funny all the way through. Sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
She has a Netflix special that just dropped too.
Oh, did she? Good.
Hilarious.
Yeah, watch it, guys, because I haven't seen it yet, but I can tell you already, she's hilarious. So if you like her and some of the bit roles that she's had, you should watch that.
She seemed to catch fire the same way. What's her name? Blonde, a little bit on the heavyset side.
All the roasts.
Yeah, what's her name?
Talking Schumer? Or are we talking?
Schumer, thank you. Yeah.
She is right now.
She's kind of blowing up the way Amy Schumer did. Hopefully, she has as much success, if not more. So.
Yes. So yeah, but back to the movie. Again, like I said, it's very entertaining. I did also like the end. They bring in most likely going to be Oscar nominated for her song in Judas and the Black Messiah. Her at the end of the movie. H.E.R. That's her name. That's what she goes by. So it was fun to see her kind of on stage with Jennifer Gardner and Jenna Ortega. It was also great. I saw scene-stealing moments from, I'm going to get the actor's name, the cop that's with them. Let's see, what's his name? Arturo Castro as Officer Jones. He's the one that's in charge of the kids when the parents get arrested, and he lets them go, and then he ends up taking Jennifer Garner to the concert, which I thought he was really funny. As he's driving the police car, I've never really driven this fast before. You want me to drive? Huh?
I do have one bone to pick.
Okay.
The concept is that they are not allowed to say no. However, when they are on the roller coaster, Jennifer Garner is heard saying, no, 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 no. She has broken the rules of yesterday. I am quite upset that this was...
So what you're saying is that her daughter earned the right to go to that concert then?
Yes.
Because that was the bet.
That is what I'm saying.
I also enjoy a good, like, kind of... That's good, Wayne. I missed that, actually. I do enjoy a good scene, too. Kind of like paintball, but it's a water balloon fight in the middle of the movie. I thought that was fun.
What is it called? I forgot. I wanted to talk about...
Kablooey.
Yeah, I'd say let's get a bunch of teams together, but we're a little old and slow.
Let's go to an old folks home and we can play it there. We have a chance.
I don't know. We'd be Statler and Waldorf from the balcony making fun of everybody. That's our role. Look at him, he got hit right in the face.
It's basically capture the flag, but with water balloons that have Kool-Aid in them. So therefore, you could it's like paintball for kids essentially. So you could tell when you've been hit. Everyone was wearing like white T-shirts or whatever. Yeah. Again, like I said, this isn't a movie that you're going to be like, oh my god, it needs to be nominated for this and that. But it's a movie I think people will enjoy. So if you're looking for something to watch with the family and you want to laugh, I would recommend watching Yes Day. Again, this isn't me giving it a 5 out of 5 stars or anything. It's just saying it's enjoyable. And I think the kids and the families will like it a lot, despite what the critics are saying about it. All right. So, moving on into our awfully good or just plain awful segment, which I'm going to change on the fly right now, Wayne. We're going to call it Why This Movie. I don't know why I've been thinking about it, but now you've just heard it here, people. Why this movie? So it kind of gives us more of a why the hell are we talking about this movie? All right, so this week was the movie Mommy from 1995. It stars Patty McCormack, Rachel Lemieux, Jason Miller from the Exorcist movies, the first and the third one, Brink Stevens, who was in a lot of horror films, like B horror films. It's a movie about a mom who's crazy. It's kind of like Serial Mom, but without the comedy. So if you're familiar with the movie Serial Mom, which I love the movie Serial Mom, it's similar to that, but it's not funny. When it is funny, it's because it's terrible acting or terrible writing or whatever. The basis, so this movie, in 1956, there was this movie called Bad Seed. And it starred Patty McCormack as a child, apparently. I haven't seen it. And she played this, like, evil child. Think like Good Son with Macaulay Culkin. And 40 years later, they decided to make a sequel called Mommy, where she is now a mother. She has her own child. And she's still just as flipping crazy as she was when she was a kid. She murdered, like in the first 10 minutes of this movie, she murders somebody. It's the way this movie is shot. I felt like it was shot on home video, Wayne. It was worse than like a soap opera. It was just, I don't know. It was hard to watch for that reason, because it was just so poorly shot, that I didn't really, it took me a while to start enjoying it because of how, bad it looked. And when I say enjoying, I don't mean good. I mean enjoying the awfulness that is this movie. It is somewhat sad to see Jason Miller from The Exorcist in this film, though, I will say. Go ahead, Wes.
The performances, they could have been so much better. You just can't get past. It's like a Sony Handycam.
Yeah.
And how they got Patty McCormack and Jason Miller and people everybody else I don't really recognize, but how they got them to agree to do this and be in the
So
It's hard to watch, man.
it is. It is hard to watch. And so Jason Miller, I'm not sure where he played a part in how he got the role, but Miguel Ferreira, who was a friend of the director Max Allan Collins, originally was in that role. Miguel Ferreira is the cousin of George Clooney, an actor from RoboCop. Everybody will remember. He passed away, unfortunately. He was originally in that, but due to scheduling conflicts, he dropped out. Jason Miller, for some reason, jumped in at the last minute. One interesting fact about Jason Miller that I discovered is that he is Jason Patric's father, and that he is also the father of a kid from class of 1999 who then went on to write a movie called The Final Girls, which is a slasher comedy that I really enjoy. So I did not know that. Those are just facts I learned looking up Jason Miller, because I knew he was in The Exorcist, and I was trying to figure out why he would take such a terrible role, and also not really care when he was in it. He wasn't very good in this movie. Granted, I feel like it was hard for anybody to be good in this film. So this is one is why this movie was made. I have no idea, because it's a TV movie. They didn't make it for money. They made it just for fun, I guess. It's not worth your time. You could skip it. It's on Amazon Prime if you're interested. So is the third one in the trilogy of movies, because there's Mommy 2. Because at the end, spoiler alert, she gets arrested. She's still alive. It's just not a good movie, and there are some enjoyable moments that I chuckled at, but they're few and far between that it's not worth your time. We'll let you know when we find something that we definitely think is, something that you should watch. Again, dubbing this why this movie, the new name, as long as Wayne's okay with it, and I just figured it's shorter and easier to write when I have to write it down. All right, so moving on, unless you have any final thoughts on Mommy, Wayne.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so moving on, we're going to what we watched this week. I watched a few things that I really enjoy. Let's see. Oh, here we go. One of the ones that I watched a couple rewatches. So I did The Martian with Matt Damon. It's a really great movie. I've only seen it probably once or twice before. And my wife put it on like when we were going to bed, and I was like, I want to watch it again. So the next day we watched it all the way through. Really good film. Great supporting cast. Fantastic supporting cast in that film. Jessica Chastain, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Jeff Daniels, Kristen Wiig, Donald Glover. Just such a huge cast in that film, and it's just very fun to watch all those actors play in this big sandbox that Ridley Scott has given them for The Martian. It's just a great, fun film. The Lincoln Lawyer, Matthew McConaughey plays a lawyer who's in his Lincoln. I wonder if that's where they got the idea to put him in all those stupid Lincoln commercials. Maybe it is. However, this movie, fun movie. He plays a lawyer who is defending a possible rapist in Ryan Phillippe, who claims he's innocent, but things are not what they seem. And then he has to make some choices as a lawyer that you would maybe not necessarily make. It's a really cool movie directed by Brad Furman. I really recommend this one if you haven't seen it. It's on IMDb for free. I watched The Dark and the Wicked, which is a horror film. I really liked it. It's about a family who their dad's dying, so they go back to be with their mom and their dad while he's on his deathbed. And it's just really well made. Directed by Brian Bertino, who did The Strangers. People will know him for that. Check it out on Shudder. I watched The Beyond, which is an old gory, I think it's like Italian, but it's in English, film. Yeah, it's Italian. Horror film about a house that's like a gateway to hell. So it's very gory, and the story's okay, but the gore and stuff is why I watched it. It was very entertaining. Honest Thief with Liam Neeson. Decent Liam Neeson movie. Not the greatest story, but lots of good action. It does have Kate Walsh and Jeffrey Donovan, who are two actors I actually like when I see them in things, so I would recommend it just for that, and I think that they should be in more stuff. The Quick and the Dead is another one I rewatched. I really enjoy that movie a lot. Directed by Sam Raimi, starring starring Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman. Just a great supporting cast. Mark Boone Jr. is in that one as well.
Is that Karen Stone her uptight older sister that doesn't like to have fun?
Yes, yes. I believe so. And also Tobin Bell from the Saw franchise makes an appearance in that as well. And then last night I watched Riot Girls, which is a movie I thoroughly enjoyed. It's a post-apocalyptic 1995 where all the parents have died off. All the kids are what's left, and they've been separated into like two factions. You got West Side and East Side, and the West Side is all the douchey athletes with their I had one their jackets their school jackets and stuff. And then the East Side is kind of more laid back, but they all have to like rummage for food and stuff and water and steal stuff. So it's just really cool, like action post-apocalyptic film about these two girls, Scratch and Nat, who are best friends that have kind of used each other to survive in the apocalypse. Very violent, very bloody, lots of fun. Really enjoyed it. One of those movies that IMDb, the ratings are so low, I don't get it. It has to be because it has the word girls in the title. That's the only thing I could think of. Because if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, it's at like 89%. So I don't know where the disparity is, and that's just what I can assume. It is an indie B movie. It's a low budget movie. So if you're judging on that, then don't watch low budget films. That's what it is. I thought it was entertaining as hell, and I really enjoyed it. And I think people should watch it. It also has Monroe Chambers from the movie Turbo Kid, if people have seen that one. He is great as this. He plays the villain in this one. But yeah, really cool movie. I'm not sure where you can check it out, to be honest, because I bought it on Vudu for like $5 a couple months ago, and I just got around to watching it now. But yeah, that's it. Wayne, you got anything for this week?
I do. My usual shows that I'm still getting through. I had to take a little break from Dexter. It's just been busy as I've started working again. So I'm there a little bit. I'm still making my way through Cougar Town. But I watched two of my guilty pleasures this week. The first one being the 2011 film, Our Idiot Brother.
Nice.
Paul Rudd, Elizabeth Banks, Zoe Deschanel, a few other folks in there. Just T.J. Miller, Catherine Hahn, just two of my, just love this movie. Just about Paul Rudd plays would you call him a hippie?
Hippie, stoner, lives off the earth type of guy.
Just good-hearted dude, and it's a good story. I think we're probably going to talk about this more at some point, so I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail, but it's just something that's always made me smile and laugh. So I got to revisit that one. And then I got to watch This Is Where I Leave You, 2014. This movie just hits for me. Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, Jane Fonda, Adam Driver, Rose Byrne.
Timothy Olyphant.
Catherine Hahn again. Jack Shepard. Ugh. After their father passes away, four grown siblings, bruised and banged up by their prospective adult lives, are forced to return their childhood home and live under the same roof for a week. I believe it's called Sitting Seder.
Yeah.
They're a Jewish family, and their father's passed away. They do this to honor and mourn. Just very interesting how you explore the lives of the four siblings, and it's rough. It's real. In a lot of ways, it dances between hard to believe and, definitely situations where you could find yourself in. And it's very touching, and it's got the funny moments. It just hits on multiple areas, and I love this movie a lot, and I'm happy that I was able to sit down and watch it. So that's the two that I just really wanted to touch on.
Yeah, two good movies. I like both of those. Solid flicks.
Also, I just found this out recently on Disney Plus. You have an option to watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe in order. They line it up for you.
Wow. Very cool. I did not know that. Chronological order, right?
Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline in order.
Nice.
Chronological. You obviously start with the first Avenger, Captain America, and you go from there. So, much like you told me about Donovan's journey, I think it was last summer or maybe
it was 2019 now, yeah.
Gosh, yeah, I'm going to be taking that journey as well soon.
Nice, I like it. That's awesome. So if anyone wants to watch it like that, I recommend it. Donovan had a good time in doing it like that. He did it twice like that, so kid's crazy. All right, so getting into the news section here. Our friend, Kurt Suter, he's not our friend really, but I call him that because we both love Sons of Anarchy, making feature film directing debut with The Beast, will be produced by Blumhouse and debut on Netflix. Turbo Kid getting video game adaptation. Elizabeth Banks is directing a movie called Cocaine Bear, based on a true story. Apparently, this guy who was like a drug mule parachuted or fell into a area in a forest, died obviously, but he had a bunch of cocaine on him, and that bear took a bunch of cocaine and died from a cocaine overdose. So they're making a movie out of that. I don't know what it's going to be about, essentially, but that's what the premise will be. Josh Holloway from... Huh?
Bears and cocaine. It's like 1985 all over again.
Nice. Josh Holloway to star in Duster for HBO Max, produced by J.J. Abrams and LaToya Morgan. Michael B. Jordan officially directing Creed 3, releasing Thanksgiving 2022. Oscar winners Natalie Portman and Lupita Nyong'o are going to star in a TV series for Apple Plus. It's a limited series called Lady in the Lake. It's a murder mystery. Kenneth Branagh to direct Bee Gees biopic. Bruce Campbell, now this is a news story I love, is going to star as a sitcom dad called Adopted for ABC and Jimmy Kimmel. Love Bruce Campbell. I'm excited for this because he, honestly, his personality is sitcom dad, so I think this will be perfect. Mother Android starring Chloe Grace Moretz, bought by Hulu. Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell, and Joel Edgerton lead ensemble cast for Ron Howard's Thai cave rescue film featuring mostly Thai actors in the other main roles. It's about the kids and their coach who were trapped in the cave, and they had to send a bunch of divers in to get them. This is not whitewashing. There were like 7 or 8 white British divers that went in to save the Thai kids. That's why Viggo, Colin Farrell, and Edgerton, they'll be playing those characters. Let's see. Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, is getting a documentary coming to HBO from the Safdie brothers who did Uncut Gems. Dev Patel is getting a John Wick-esque action film called Monkey Man, bought by Netflix and starring and directed by Patel. It is already done, so I would imagine probably sometime later this year. Rob Zombie is directing a new horror comedy with his regular actors in Hungary. Rumored to be a Munsters adaptation. Now, this has not been confirmed. People have no idea if this is true. A lot of people have a hard time believing that Universal would let Rob Zombie make a Munsters movie. But it has been confirmed that he is in Hungary, and they are going to start shooting a horror comedy with a lot of his original actors, including his wife. So people are questioning whether the story is true or not. No one has confirmed or denied the rumors. Kaylee Cuoco to play Doris Day in limited series for Warner Brothers. She is producing with Greg Berlanti of the DC TV Arrowverse. Attack the Block sequel in the works from director Joe Cornish and star John Boyega. Mark Webb to direct R.L. Stein's Just Beyond for Disney+. Movies coming out. Oxygen from horror director Alexandre Aja hits Netflix May 12th. The Quiet Place 2 moved up to Memorial Day. Then it'll hit Paramount Plus 45 days later. That's our show for this week, everybody. We appreciate everybody listening to our podcast each week. We hope that you have had a good St. Patrick's Day, as this episode will come out after St. Patrick's Day. So we hope that it was good for you. And the Oscar nominations will come out on Monday the 15th, so we will talk about those next week, if anyone's wondering. We do these obviously a week ahead of time, so then when we post them, and certain things have happened and whatnot. So we'll talk about that stuff when we can. You can follow us at Now Showing with Mike and Wayne on Facebook and Instagram, at now_Wayne on Twitter. Email us at nowshowingwithmikeandwayne@gmail.com. You can find me at We Are Screwed 2 on Twitter, at Mike1830 on Instagram, at Michael Kirkpatrick on Facebook. Wayne, you can find him at Wayne Yerke on Twitter and Facebook, at Wayne_Yerke on Instagram. We are also on Entertainment Buffet's YouTube page, so go check us out there. For Wayne Yerke, I am Mike Kirkpatrick. Thank you for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.